Welcome to Biggest Geekus. I'm your host, Joe. This is episode 199 of the show, and the date is Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. I am by myself today. My normal co-host, Randy, is out of town, and buckling up now, says Arn Man. And hello, Larry. We got Larry and Arn Man there in the chat. Hopefully we can scare up a few more. It says 5, so I only see 2. Hopefully a few more will make their presence known here soon. Legion of Myth, welcome. So I am going solo today, so this might end up being a fairly short episode. I'm just going to do some Savage Worlds character creation today because we are at the beginnings of a new campaign. Randy started a new campaign. We're using Savage Worlds fantasy companion characters, and so I'm going to make one. Well, we're going to make just a regular Savage Worlds character for those of you who are unfamiliar with how that works, and I just figured it'd be a good idea. If I have a little extra time, I might make a couple of Horde Wars characters as well. Our whole party was wiped last week, so I need a new character, and I'm not really sure precisely what I'm going to play. So I might make 2, depending on. I'll make one that's maybe a spellcaster and one that's maybe more combat oriented. We'll see. We'll see how tonight goes. Hopefully we can scare up a few more people. Not that many folks out there, but for those who are here, welcome. I guess it says 4, and I have a window of it open too, so it's probably accurately counting how many folks are actually tuning in at the moment. Perhaps folks were not interested in Savage Worlds, but that's okay. I'm going to ask folks out here in the chat. Legion says, I haven't played it yet, and I'm going to wait for the advanced edition to buy it, but I really like Horde Wars, what Horde Wars is selling. Right, played it as in Horde Wars. Right. Larry says, Brian created a Crusader Knight for Horde Wars, and you did a Crusader Warlord. Right, so maybe I'll just go full on Wizard this time around. We'll see. Last time I had a Assassin Red Wizard, and kind of in a lot of the role playing games, specializing is a better idea than generalizing when you have options. I'm not really sure if Horde Wars is like that, but it did seem like I was trying to pick options that were spread out between combat and magic. So maybe I'll just do straight on Wizard, see how that works out. All right. I don't really think there's anything real big out there new in our industry. We are kind of behind the times here at Biggest Geekus. Last week we announced that who was it that was out, has been out for a couple of months. Where is it at? Kyle Brinks. We kind of announced that Kyle Brinks was out, but it was us getting caught up with everybody else. I guess, yes, there is something fairly new. Apparently, Wizards of the Coast went and bought up a bunch of essentially ad space on YouTube via payoffs to YouTubers, and that's fine. If a big company wants to pay a YouTuber to have ad placements and such in their programming lineup, that's fine. I don't fault anybody for wanting to make a little extra money. But it's kind of interesting that all of a sudden your recommended feed here in YouTube was just chock full of videos about various classes coming up in the new edition of D&D, which, I mean, it's something that's happening. It's not a huge thing that I'm interested in because I'm not interested in the newest edition of D&D coming up. Hey, Shadow and Sun, welcome. So, this past week, I finally made it back to work for a full week. I had been out because of a broken finger, and it really stunk having to go back to work, but got to pay the bills. So last week was a full week at work. Didn't do any gaming, but that's okay. All right, so how about we start making that Savage Worlds character. Now, for those of you not familiar with Savage Worlds, yes, Larry, the tax man needs me working. Savage Worlds doesn't have 4 stats. They don't have what a lot of other systems have, as in just a number. Your stats, of which there are 5, as you can see here on the screen, this is the top portion of the character sheet. It has a section for attributes, and they are expressed in dice. All characters start out with a D4 in each of these dice. Or in each of these attributes. So we'll go and select the D4 in all of these. So when you make a roll to accomplish a thing, if it's based on one of the 5 attributes, you roll that die that it is. In this case, it's at D4 until we bump it up a little bit through character creation. And you roll a D6 as a player character. It's called the wild die. And you roll them both together and treat each one separate. You have a target number that's fairly low. It's generally 4, depending on circumstances. If you're trying to hit somebody, it's usually their parry, which can be 5 or 6 or more. If you're shooting a ranged weapon, it's most of the time it's 4. Unless you are attacking them, an adjacent character with a ranged weapon, then it's their parry instead of that 4. So, as a brand new character, like I said, your attributes all start out at D4. And unfortunately, I do not have the rule book in PDF form. I thought I did, and then when I went to find it, it wasn't there. Unfortunately, sorry about that, but I'm going to roll through the character creation. So, what do you think we should make tonight? Let's stick with fantasy because that's what we do. What kind of character should I make? Should I make a melee or a magic character? What do you guys think? Let me know there in the chat. I'm going to get to the character creation page. Right. All right. Well, I am normally magic. All right. Well, I was getting ready to say that because I hadn't seen anybody post anything here. Magic character, I can do. So, like I said, you get your 5 stats. They start at D4, and you get 5 points to increase these attributes up 1 die type per point. The only caveat to that is you can't go above a D12 because that's the limit, D12. All right. So if we're going to make a magic character, generally it's either a character it's either smarts or spirit, for the kind of character for the kind of skill that you need, because you take an arcane background, and then depending on which background you take, it will tell you whether it's a smarts based skill or a spirit based skill. So how about I flip over to that and take a peek. At these arcane backgrounds. So Thyatis says, I find magic characters to be a little more difficult to build in Savage Worlds, so I'd like to see more examples of such. That's cool. Actually, there's a fantasy companion that I was mentioning a little earlier. I can open up that PDF and we can look at some of the arcane backgrounds in that book, because it has several, and it has there are a bunch of pre-made characters in that book as well to give a good jumping off point for anyone interested in a magic character. It's got to be at least 6 or 8 different fully magic characters. Let's see, chapter 5, arcane backgrounds 147. All right. So in the standard book, which is the Adventurer's Edition book, there are only 5 backgrounds. There's gifted, magic, miracles, psionics, and weird science. And when you pick that as what's called an edge. And we'll get to that. So let's just go with that just to make this easy. Arcane skill is spellcasting and is based on smarts. So we get 5 points for our attributes. So smarts needs to be at least D6. I would say probably a D8. We'll move that up to D8. That's 2 of our 5 points. That's 2 of the 5 points. In this game, your vigor is fairly important to staying alive. You don't have hit points. What you have are wounds. It's not tracked on your sheet necessarily, but what you have are wounds, and if you take 3 wounds, you die, or you are incapacitated. And when you are wounded, when it becomes your turn, soon after you're wounded, you get a chance to what's called shake the wound. You also get it's a status that you get when you get hit. As well as you get wounded, you can be shaken. I guess you don't shake. I don't think you shake the wound. It's another term. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But soak the wound. Thank you, Larry. So when you get hit, you take a wound. You're also shaken. You make a roll, which is a vigor roll, to clear that. And if your vigor is low, it's still only a 4. The target number is only 4. But if you have a D4 and you need a 4, it's going to be hard for you to get rid of that wound. And every time you have every wound that you currently have is a -1 on all of your rolls. So and you can have up to, you have 2 wounds. Once you hit that 3rd wound, you're in trouble. So I usually put the vigor at least a D6. Mac Thompson, just a quick drive-by, like, support, and say hi. Yes, please and thank you. Deep into book research. All right. I'll watch this one in a day or two. Cheers. All right, Mac. I'm just making a Savage Worlds character. Nothing earth-shattering. So we've used 3 of our 5 points. 2 on smarts, 1 on vigor. Don't necessarily need a big number in strength if you're going to be casting magic, which is typical for the wizard types. Since we have 2 left, I'm going to put 1 in agility and 1 in spirit, just so that he doesn't have a D4 in all of his physical stats. All right, now that we have that done, the next thing that we do is pick our skills. In this version of Savage Worlds, there's a thing called core skills, and there are 5 of them. They're already written into the skills section here. Athletics, common knowledge, notice, persuasion, and stealth. Those are free, and you have a D4 in each one of them to start off. And as a starting character, you have 12 points to buy skills or increase these base skills as well. And just like attributes, 1 point buys the skill, and each subsequent point gives you a higher die in that skill. Now, once you are playing, it isn't so easy to up your skills, but when you're making the character, you can end up with a pretty decent spread if you decide to do that. So at the very least, he's going to need spellcasting, as a skill. Wow, that's a very small font there, isn't it? Oh, well, can't do anything about it at the moment. All right, so he has spellcasting. We're going to put that minimum. Whoop. Oh, there we go. Minimum of a D6. Probably pop it to D8 by the time we're done with this. But I'm thinking we probably want him to have a little bit of fighting. Because your parry is based on your fighting. It's your half your die type. So if we give him a D6 in fighting, it's 3 plus half your die type in fighting. So your parry would end up being 6. Toughness kind of works the same way. It's 3 plus half your die type. I believe it's 3 derived stats. No, it's 2. Yeah, it's 2 plus half, not 3. So we have to correct this and make this a 5. And this one will also be a 5. Five because 2 plus half the die type of vigor, which is a D6. And if we end up increasing any of this before we're done with the character, we'll increase the parry and or toughness. All right, so we've spent 1, 2, 3, 4 of our 12 in spellcasting and fighting. I'm going to bump up notice and common knowledge as well. That'll give us 6 of our 12. We got 6 more points to spend. Probably survival, being a fantasy game, is probably a good idea. Probably also riding. Because you're probably going to be riding a horse at some point. Let's see here. And because he's into the magic stuff, occult. I think that will probably do. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need 6 more. We got 3. We'll just put these all at D6. So that will give us our 12 points. All right. We'll just go with human. For race, they have a lot of the typical ones: elves, dwarves. There's a dragon-like character in here. Well, sorry, half elves. I guess they didn't want. They've got halflings. They call them half folk for some reason. A cat people called Rakashans. So there's several choices, but we're going to go with human. Humans get an extra edge, which is always great. So edges are kind of equivalent to feats from D&D. That'll help you figure out what they're like. So he's going to get a free edge for being human. And we're just going to make that arcane background magic. Well, that's it. Let's see. All right. Now, the next thing that we do here is we pick up some hindrances. And the reason you pick up some hindrances is that it kind of fleshes out your character a bit, and it buys your initial edges. Now, this character has one already from being a human, which is cool, but he's going to be able to get as many as 2 more. So you can get an edge. Like arcane background, you get stuff that improves your fighting and other things. But you can also use that edge to increase one of the attributes. I kind of think they're fine the way they are, so probably will not do that. So we will go to the edges section. Now there's edges called power edges that will increase or improve the character's spell casting in this case, or powers in the case of perhaps superheroes and things like that. So you can get extra power points. There's an edge called Wizard. Believe that's probably with the base thing. I believe I should probably just call this Wizard. No, you don't get that initially. You take Wizard later on. That's an extra. That's a season. So okay, I guess I should explain one other thing. Instead of levels, this is not a leveled game. You have tiers, and your initial tier is novice. And after you gain experience gives you an advance. and you need 4 advances to get to the next tier. And the next tier is seasoned, and then veteran, then heroic, and then legendary. And so it's fairly, depending on how the game master runs his game, it can be a fairly rapid advancement. So I think I am all over the place here. I just wanted to make sure that you understand when I said it's seasoned. So that wizard edge I was talking about is for after you've gotten a few advances under your belt, and now you can, instead of just calling yourself a mage, you can call yourself a wizard. All right. What we're going to do next is look at those hindrances, and then we'll figure out advances, and then we'll pick out spells. So, like in a lot of games, you can take things that are a hindrance, as they're called, to your character, such as blind, which is pretty difficult to adventure with, but maybe you can do it. You get a -6 on all your physical tasks that you might want to perform. But something that might work better for you is something called anemic. And anemic characters are particularly susceptible to sickness, disease, environmental effects, and fatigue. And you subtract 2 from vigor rolls made to resist fatigue. So, what do you think would be in a general sense, what kind of hindrance would you want this wizard character to have? He could have anything you can think of, and we can just pick one of these hindrances here. I'm sure they will fit. Something that's kind of typical of a fantasy setting is a code of honor. A lot of people like playing curious characters. Greedy, illiterate. That wouldn't work well for a wizard. I don't believe. Or mute. Let's see. How about we pick up Code of Honor? Okay, we have to pick 4 points in hindrances. A major hindrance is 2, a minor hindrance is 1. So you can either have 4 minor, 2 major, a major, and a minor. So we'll go with Code of Honor. I always like playing characters with a Code of Honor. Yes, arrogance. Yeah, and that's another major one. I'll put that down too. So he has a Code of Honor, but is also arrogant. I think they go well together. I wonder if they have a separate one called Overconfident. I think they do. Overconfident, yeah, and it's also major. So arrogant, you think you're the best at what you do, even if you're not. And overconfident, there's nothing out there your character can't defeat. Kind of similar, but we'll go with arrogant. So that buys us 2 more edges, apart from the arcane background that we already picked. So he might end up playing a little bit like a lot of people like playing paladins. You're a good guy, but you rub everybody the wrong way. Kind of snobbish. All right. So, something that might work well with this guy, since he's arrogant, we will get an edge called Aristocrat. Aristocrats add 2 on persuasion when networking. So they have aristocrats have contacts. It doesn't necessarily mean they have extra money. You have to take a separate edge for that. But he has contacts in the upper crust. And let's see, let's find one that will help him out with his powers. All right. We will. How about we just go with an easy one called Power Points? You get extra 5 out of that. Whoops. Power Points. I believe. Let's see, 47. I believe that will bring his PowerPoint total up to either 15 or 20. $15, because he starts out with 10. You get 3 powers. All right. All right. All right, so far, we're kind of almost already done. We got 3 powers to pick. Gear to select or buy. Everything in Savage Worlds, when you're buying your gear, is in dollars. So you start out with dollars. And everything is priced in dollar amounts here in this book. Let's see. He's not going to need a whole lot of gear. He's not really going to need armor. A staff. That's probably be about it. Let's head on over to the powers. They're in here somewhere. Here we go. All right. Because this is not a leveled game, it is tiered. These characters will start off with powers that you may not think a beginning character would have, based on perhaps playing D&D, having really weak spells at the beginning. But novice characters, this is a novice character, can get Bolt. Bolt these are all generic. All these powers are fairly generic. They encourage you to change the names and come up with sort of trapping, which is a theme for the magic that your character or the powers that your character possesses. They don't necessarily all have to have the exact same trappings, but they all do need to have trappings of some kind. So let's come down here and figure out some powers. So Bolt is essentially a damaging burst of energy that streaks from you to your target, kind of like a magic missile. So let's just go with Bolt as an easy first pick. Its base amount of power points is only 1. Range is, for spells, a lot of the range, a lot of the range types for the spells are based on your character's smarts. So this character's smarts is D8 or D6, D8. And when it says smarts, it means the die type, which is D8 or 8, in amount of squares on the squares on your sheet, on your map. or yards or meters. So fairly short for a lot of things that we may be used to. So this is smarts times 2. So it would be 16 squares. And this is instantaneous, I believe. Yep, instant. We'll just put the damage here under effect. It's 2d6 or 3d6 on RAISE on a raise. So a 4 is your typical target number on most of your activities, unless you're hitting somebody in melee combat, and then you're trying to hit their parry value. If you get 4 over the target number, it's called a raise. There's kind of a playing card motif in the game, and that's where this raise word comes from. But 4 over that target number is a raise. So when this character casts his bolt, you would roll his spell casting, which is the d6, and you have a second d6 that you roll with it, your wild die, and you're looking for at least a 4. And since you're only rolling a d6, the most you can get on a single die is a 6. So you have to at least get the maximum, and when you do that, it's called an ace, and then you get to roll the die again until you stop rolling the highest number on that die. So you would have to get an ace to raise, and you have to roll fairly decent on one of those d6s to even get his spell off. So maybe we should modify this a little bit and pop his spell casting up to d8. That's maybe something we should do. Maybe I'll bump that common knowledge down 1 and bump up spell casting 1. It's the same amount of. It'll end up being the same amount of points that are spent 12 on skills. So he has bolt, and not only do they encourage you to have your own trappings, like it can be electricity or fire, or what are some other examples in here? Could just be light, stream of insects even. So you pick that aspect of it, and then during play, let's say you're fighting something, you say your bolt is a stream of stinging insects. Well, if my character is somehow protected against insects for some reason, I have armor that's particularly resistant to insects, then that will affect the outcome of the spell or the power. Let's say you're fire resistant, and the guy decided his bolt is fire. Now, in terms of this game, once you've figured out your opponent might be resistant to the trappings of your spell, you can't just change it. You might need to, depending on who your GM is, you might need to spend extra power points or have an edge that lets you do that for that particular spell. It would all depend on how that would work at your table. So let's make our bolt something interesting. How about we do that in insect spray. All right. All right. Another novice power is dark sight, kind of like dark vision. Dark sight allows the hero to see in the dark. With the success, he ignores up to 4 points of illumination penalties that's how illumination works in this game. It gives you penalties depending on how far away you are from light sources. A raise, it ignores up to 6 points. Dark sight. And let's follow along in this insect motif and give him bug eyes. Dark sight only costs 1 point. And you can put that on another person too. The power does not. This power has a range, so you can cast it on yourself, or you can cast it on someone else. Or that sorry. The range is your range how you can see in the dark. Sorry. It is not for you to share that power with others. Smarts. Range isn't very long. You can't see very far in the dark with this. Anyway. Duration is 1 hour. Ignore 4 points. Penalty. 4 points of illumination penalties. 6 on raise. Let's see how it does that. Okay. And the final one, last power. Let's see. Some novice powers are deflection, which is a mystic shield. You can detect magic, or they call it arcana. Divination. Well, this is a good one. I'm going to pick this. Elemental manipulation. This power grants basic control over the 4 traditional elements: air, earth, fire, and water. The power acts as if it has a D6 strength or a D8 with a raise. If you're hitting somebody with that element, like stone or say a pseudopod of water, it's pretty open-ended power. It gives you some examples of what you could do, but it's not limited to these. So if you picked air when you cast it, you can with elemental manipulation, you have access to all of the elements. So air, you can just push someone, blow out a torch, fan a flame, cool someone down. Earth, you can move a square foot of earth each round, cover tracks. It has a fairly short duration, but it's also only 1 point per 5 rounds that you want to have it active. Let's see here. Yeah, so we'll go with that. I'm going to have to think on what the trappings are for that. So sometimes the suggestions of trappings are interesting in here, but sometimes they're not. The trappings of elemental manipulation, they only have one example. A few simple gestures. Kind of weak. It's also only 1 power point. Range is smarts. Duration is 5. Effect. See page. I'm just going to put the page number in here so it can be referenced during play if you need to. All right. So we have the bare minimum. We need a name. Does someone want to go out to the interwebs? Hey, Tunkatod, I missed you in there. You and Real Long Shot. I was really focusing on this character here. Go out to ye old random name generator and generate us a name for this character. That would be really cool. Let's see. We've got to determine the paces on here in this area right here. Hopefully you can see my mouse's cursor. So that's your movement speed. Here we go. Pace. Standard pace is 6, and then it gets changed depending on size, condition, and stuff like that. So let's give him a staff. Traveling clothes. Rations. And that should be it. Good for now. Let's see. Not getting any response. I will bring up the old random name generator. Let's see here. No, not that one. Let's see. Random. Let's see. There we go. There we go. Fantasy name generator. Let's see. Fantasy and folklore. I think they have a section for just wizard names. All right. With male names. All right. Let me see if I can't share this. All right. Here are some names. Not even sure how to pronounce some of these. How about I click this email names again, see if I can get something a little bit better. Zonax. Zonax sounds like a medication. Medication designed to make you sleep, I think. This one's an all right name, Orobus. I will go with that. So this dude's a human. Let's say he's average height, 5'7", and weighs about 50. All right. So we have a spellcaster made with the Savage Worlds rules. Essentially a mage or wizard, whatever you want to call him, spellcaster. Has 3 powers: Bolt, Dark Sight, and Elemental Manipulation. Gives him some decent options during gameplay, only one real option during combat, but in Savage Worlds, you really want to kind of avoid as much combat as you can. He could hit someone with that staff, and it might be worthwhile. I should look up the stats on that thing. Weapons. Strength plus D4 for damage. Weight is 10. Notes. It has parry plus 1. Reach 1. And it's two-handed. Oh, whoops. All right. Fat figuring a lot. So while he's got that staff in hand, his parry is actually a 6 instead of a 5. So I will put that there. All right. So it's a little bit better parry. And with Savage Worlds, he could actually just wear armor like anybody else. In a fantasy setting, there's nothing stopping him by the rules of Savage Worlds. It would have to be a table rule, or you would go with Fantasy Companion, which many of the arcane backgrounds have some built-in restrictions on armor, but they give you extra little things you can do, an extra edge or something to make up for it. So not a bad character, I don't think. So if Thyatus is still watching, here is a magic character who has 3 spells. He has 15 power points. Now, they don't have a good place for the listing of power points, so I'm going to put them here. 15 total. There we go. All right. So he should be able to cast quite a bit of spells. Now, all of these spells have a way to use extra power points to make the base power of it increase. So with Bolt, you can spend an extra 2 points, I believe. Yes, 2 points to increase the damage. And it changes the base damage from 2d6 or 3d6 on a raise to 3d6, 4d6 on a raise. I'm sorry. Oh, yes, and there are some standard power modifiers that you don't need that are common to many powers. They're not listed individually under each power. So you can do something like armor piercing. So that bolt you can spend from an extra point up to 3 points to give it an armor piercing rating, which essentially just makes makes that power ignore armor. Hence the name armor piercing. Armor is essentially increases your character's durability. It doesn't make you harder to hit necessarily. What it does is increase the amount of damage you need to do on your damage roll to generate a wound. So normally you have to go over the target's toughness by 4 to generate a wound. If you meet it and go up to 3 over, you just they're shaken instead. So armor piercing would reduce that armor so that you could potentially need less damage on your damage roll to end up generating a wound. Now, if they're not wearing armor, it doesn't make any difference whether it's armor piercing or not. But generally, for when you go up against someone in plate armor or some other thing, maybe a magical effect that gives them armor. Let's see, what does the other? I've got Bolt and I've got Dark Sight. Dark Sight, you can spend more points for more recipients. So the base power lets you be able to see in darkness. If you spend more points, you can 1 point per extra target. Each person can now see in the dark. And that's not too bad, really. And then elemental manipulation has no power modifier. So it just does what it does. All right. I think we were successful in making a wizard for Savage Worlds. Now, this is not including any of the rules from the Fantasy Companion. Maybe. Oh, see you later, Larry. Perhaps next time we do this, Randy and I can make one with the Fantasy Companion, and we can go from there. We have more options. And if I have to be a little honest, I think that they're a little more powerful. You get more hindrances, but you get more edges as well. All right. Well, we are at the 1 hour. Near the 1 hour mark. We have made a Savage Worlds character. Now, if you just do this on your own without talking the whole time, it won't take you that long, especially if you're used to making them. It'll take you as little as 15 minutes. Maybe less if you already know what you're going to do. And in so saying, let me flip over to my notes here. All right. Yep. The Geek Con is coming up in September 20th to 22nd. $30 for 3 days of gaming. 4 points. It is at 4 Points by Sheraton in Saginaw, Michigan. There is currently a link in the show notes. Oh, Arnman says that Larry can't go. Actually, I think since I've gotten to the hour mark, we're probably good for this. I thought maybe I would just zip through the character creation a lot faster and would have a lot of dead time. But took an hour, and that's good. Perhaps I will do another video with Horde Wars characters, but today we got the one character. I think we're good. Big Geek Con, like I said, is coming up in September. There is a link in the description for where you can buy tickets. It's at tabletop.events. That is some bad spelling. All right. And with that, I don't think I have anything else to go over. I think that is it. I'm doing some editing here of my notes. All right. With all that being said, this is Joe. And remember, if you can't be big like us, before I sign off, I just want to thank everybody for coming by. Wasn't a big crowd, but that's fine. Hopefully, people catch us, catch the episode after the fact. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. Anyone who's here who's not already, like, subscribe, and share. Have a good night to you too, Legion. And again, I'm Joe, and remember, if you can't be big like us, then be geeks like us.